for the New World Order. You know, he's got his Fall's latest album, Egypt Station. It has like a pyramid on it, and Illuminati symbolism. I mean, there's something about that in the book too, or you know, about his being Illuminati or whatever. But he's shilling for the New World Order agenda, basically. Back then, it was promoting drug use. So
of course.
The band, the Beatles, was hijacked with this replacement. They put their man in, and their controlled puppet in. So you get Sgt. Pepper's, which is like an Illuminati puppet show, basically. They're admitting that it's not the Beatles anymore. The album cover is a graveside with all of the people that they would have wanted at their funeral. And Derek Taylor admitted, I mean, he was their press secretary, whatever. He admitted that it was a grave scene, a grave site. So there's all this symbolism on Sgt. Pepper, and there's a lot of death symbolism, a lot of violence, a lot of head injury symbolism that comes starting with this album. So it's very strange because, you know, up until the end of the U.S. tour in '66, at the end of August, you know, the Beatles had been constantly in the news. They were the most photographed subject of the '60s. They were having press conferences left and right. And they come back from the U.S. tour and disappear for 4 months.
Right.
There's nothing until then. In December, they are going into the EMI studios to record, and it's obviously not Paul. Like, we have comparison pictures of that person who's supposedly Paul, you know, in quotation marks, and the real Paul from, you know, Memphis, from August 19th, 1966. You put them side by side, and you can see that the Paul from December of '66, his nose is like a foot longer than the real Paul's. It's like really obvious. And of course, you know,
and I understand
that was something.
I understand he's taller as well. There's some major differences. Yeah.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 inches taller than the real Paul. There are a lot of physical differences. So, you know, the forensic scientists back in 2009, they published an article in Wired Italia, and they came up with 6 physical differences. It was skull shape. Paul's head was rounder, and Paul's is more elongated. The nasal spine was different, and they hinted that the mustache, the fake mustache, was meant to conceal the difference. The jawline was different. The tragus, which is the part of the ear, was different. The teeth were different. The palate was different.
So basically, you're talking.
There's like 6 differences, yeah.
You're talking biometrics here, which is very difficult to change. Even with plastic surgery, you really can't change certain things on a human being's anatomy.
Yeah, some of these things are impossible to change even with plastic surgery. How do you change your skull shape? It doesn't happen. So, and these forensic scientists, if they had continued their biometrical study, I imagine they would have found more differences, but having found 6, they're probably like, this is overkill. This is obviously not the same person.
Yeah.
You need one difference, really. One difference, and these are 6. But on top of that, another researcher found that Paul has polydactyly, which means he has 6 toes. He has 6 toes. Now, this was Greg Gentry. I'm going to give him credit because I appreciate that he gave me this information. He sent me pictures of Paul with 6 toes. And I was like, wow, I felt really dumb for not having noticed it before.
Well,
and Another one of my friends, Timothy Leslie, who's listening now, he posted a picture of Paul with 6 toes on my wall and pointed it out, and I was like, oh no, don't give it away. I'm publishing this book soon. I don't want to, it's a spoiler alert now. That people didn't seem to really react to it, but it's like, what, did Paul suddenly sprout another toe, an extra toe in his mid-20s? Who believes that?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's pretty funny to see how people will rationalize away these differences because they can't accept the truth. They just can't.
Yeah. Well,
they can't incorporate it into their paradigm, so they have to just shut it out and say, "Oh, no, I can't hear you." No. Like little children, they can't deal with reality.
Yeah. Well, we as you know, we hear that a lot in the whole field of paranormal anyway. When you get outside of people's normal paradigm, they glaze over. They don't even want to hear, and they don't absorb anything that's to the contrary. But, I just something jumped out at me when you talked about the August 25th Seattle, Washington show, which you believe was the last show of the real Paul McCartney in the Beatles. And then in August... You know what? Yeah.
People are saying that they don't have us on here anymore. Did you drop off?
No, that's just the Facebook. So what I do typically, I'll do the first hour of the interview on Facebook so people can watch me do the show, which is basically what they're doing. But the actual audio part is on Night Dreams Talk Radio. So if people are missing us, they just got to go to nightdreamstalkradio.com and they'll listen to the whole interview. That's what we try to do, is get people to come back over to the radio side after the first hour.
Okay.
But the question that I had was that, gosh, there's only 4 days between the Seattle show and the San Francisco show, you said on the 29th of August, 1966, where you believe that the fall was the replacement already took place. How did that happen so quickly? Obviously, they had prepared ahead of time for this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's one reason why I dismissed that it was an accident, because it takes time to train and to find and train a double. So so it was Paul in Seattle, and then they went to LA, and there was 2 days of downtime of R&R. And then there was the LA press conference on August 28th, which is not Paul anymore. His hair, for one thing, looks really weird, like it's a weird wig or something, but it doesn't look normal. And he's taller, and he's using his right hand a lot, and there's some inside jokes about, like, oh, did the Beatles use decoys? Oh, our image isn't like our real image. I mean, they're just, kind of making fun of people for not noticing. But then there was the last show was Candlestick in San Francisco on the 29th of August. And it's very strange because you would think that the last Beatles concert would be just shamelessly promoted, wouldn't you?
Yes.
It's not. It's been suppressed. There's hardly anything on it.
Oh,
and
very
a lot
interesting.
of people who went, a lot of people who went, Shea Stadium in '65 was this amazing experience. People just, you can watch the videos and it's wow, that's a crazy, crazy concert, amazing.
Yeah, you could hardly hear the Beatles play because it was so loud, screaming noise from the young girls watching.
Yeah, well, Candlestick, people said, was just not a good show. That they were not personable. It was just not good. They didn't sound good. So.
Well, you can imagine, Tina. You can imagine if indeed that was not the real Paul McCartney, the rest of the band must have been in shock at that moment, or at least that show.
Yeah. Yeah, something really weird was going on. Maybe they had been told something, he was sick, or he was in an accident, or something, but they probably didn't know the full story. Because if they did, I'm sure they wouldn't have continued with the tour.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about Shea Stadium in '65, it was kind of funny because last year in 2017, Paul was in a concert in Brisbane, Australia, and somebody had a sign that said Shea 1965 on it. And Paul noticed it, and he said, "Oh, that was before my time."
He actually said that.
He actually said that, yes. So he's constantly telling people that they're not catching on. They're like, no, he's telling the truth. He's telling people. He says, there's me and there's the famous him. I don't want to sound schizophrenic, but really, I'm like two people. Like, he is constantly saying things like that.
Oh, very interesting.
And people are just like, oh, ha, ha, ha. It's like, no, he's really telling you people wake up.
So basically, you're saying that in a very short span of time, he was replaced in San Francisco, of course, but they had obviously been working on this project, trying to find someone who looks like him and who could pass for Paul McCartney and train the guy. So what's that backstory?
Okay.
Tell us about that and who you think they picked or whatever.
So what I think happened is there was a Paul McCartney lookalike contest in 1965, and this thing actually really did happen. It was in Scotland. I think it was in Scotland, but it was hosted by American Bandstand, and somebody else was involved in it. But Keith Allison was the official winner, and he later was part of Paul Revere and the Raiders. But I think what they did was they used it as a scouting for talent opportunity. And whoever they chose, he probably never even made it to the finals. They're like, hey, we're gonna use you and train you. And they might have had several falls. I mean, a lot of these politicians will have several doubles on standby.
Yeah.
That they'll just kind of rotate, and they have a stable of doubles. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there were multiple falls. So anyway, so that was 65. So plenty of time to prepare the guy for 66, the summer of 66. And then, like I said, there were the 2 days of downtime in LA, which could have been used for last-minute preparation for the double. Like, hey, you're on. Like, you're going to have to actually appear as Paul McCartney and pull this off. So, I don't know, the guys seemed pretty uncomfortable at the LA press conference,
You can just wonder what the heck the story was with the rest of that was told to the rest of the Beatles, why this other guy was stepping in at the last minute for Paul. And I would imagine that if they were told anything, they were a little bit worried about their own skin at that point. What do we do at this point? Yeah. How are we going to deal with this if they're going to come after us?
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, isn't that a motivation to keep silence or to go along with the game? Because first of all, this is what happened to Paul. So let that be a lesson to you. That, there are lots of ways to persuade people to cooperate. There's blackmail, there's bribery, there are threats, there's imposter replacement. Like, hey, we can take the most famous face in the world, one that millions of women are fixated on. They've studied every line on that man's face, and we can switch him out with the double, and they never notice. That is chilling. That is so scary. Well, some people noticed, obviously, because we're talking about it. But a lot of people are just like, well, he looks different. But they didn't catch on, It's like, he looks different. Sergeant Pepper, it's like, he's not cute anymore. But they never... It was like, people were talking about that he had died in a car accident and he had been replaced by a double. But I think back then in '69, when it really became big news, that people were probably more trusting of the government than they are now. and they didn't have the benefit of the internet where they could go and see all these pictures and